ChoralEd. Welcome to episode 51 of ChoralEd. I'm your host, Micah Bland. Thanks so much for watching. Today, as we continue our series on technology for the music educator, we turn our attention to the audio signal chain. The audio signal chain is the process by which we get sound from the source through the whole system, all the equipment that we need to get then sound out of the speakers and so that we can hear it. That is the audio signal chain. This concept and this topic is one of those fundamental basic features of audio equipment, and we need to understand this process before we get to anything more advanced. It's also important to understand the audio signal chain. If you're purchasing equipment, needing to replace equipment, needing to know what to buy, where the issue is, what actually you are buying, what is a preamp, what is an amplifier, what are all these things. And so that is the overall idea for today. When it comes to the audio signal chain, we begin with the source, either the singer or the instrument that you're going to amplify by a microphone. So that singer then sings into a microphone. That microphone is then connected by an XLR cable, a mic cable. We talked about that in our last episode. A mic to the mic cable to the preamp. This is something we may not be familiar with. A preamp or a preamplifier boosts the audio signal for future use. Now, when the signal comes into the microphone, it's a weaker signal. And then as we have longer cables, that signal becomes weaker over distance. And so the goal of the preamp is to then boost the signal. From there, out of the preamp, there are some more cables that are run to the mixer. And then from the mixer, there are some outputs that go back to an amplifier. Now this amplifier then boosts the signal again, and we have more cables then running to speakers, and so that amplifier boosts the signals and powers the speakers, and then sound comes out. So again, the signal chain is the sound source to a microphone. Microphone is connected by a cable, an XLR cable. Typically, it could be a 1/4-inch cable for instruments, but then it's connected to a preamp, from the preamp to the mixer, from the mixer to the amplifier, amplifier to the speakers. Another part of that signal chain maybe is a wireless microphone, and so there's a wireless signal as we talked about in the last episode, episode 50. And then from that, the wireless signal microphone, there's a receiver, and that receiver is then plugged into a preamp and so forth, and the signal chain continues. Now, you might say, well, I don't have all that equipment. I don't have a preamp, and I don't have an amplifier when I'm using something like this, as you see here in the image, one of these all-in-one units. Very common, very popular. And so while you may not see this equipment, it's actually still there. So within this unit and in many mixers, there are preamplifiers built in. Also in this unit, there is an amplifier to power the speaker built into the unit. And so you may not see all the components, but they're all there within the unit at times. And I also want to mention, some people don't have preamps. They don't use preamps for various setups. And that is, as I mentioned, in most mixers, basically all mixers now, preamps are built into the mixer. Now, the reason people like the external preamps is because they like the brand or they like the sound that it creates. Sometimes it does color the sound a little bit, various preamps and various settings. And so that is the purpose for those external preamps. But most mixers have a preamp built in. So if you don't have a preamp, if you're doing a setup somewhere else, not in your typical theater, you have to set up the system yourself. Don't worry about not having a preamp. The other thing I want to mention is on the amplifiers, again, they amplify and boost the signal for the speakers. They also power the speakers. However, You may go, well, I have this unit and I don't have an amplifier that boosts the speakers. If your speakers have a power cable and you have to plug them into a power source, then the amplifier is actually built into the speaker. You might like something like this. And that is part of the speaker. There's different types of speakers. Some require an external amplifier. And a lot of the newer ones, I feel like nowadays, that you probably would buy as educators, have the amplifier built into the speaker. So some of these elements may not be needed, may not be used based on the equipment you're using. So it can get a little confusing at times as well. Another thing I want to mention about the audio signal chain is when you're working in a theater, in an auditorium, you may not see some of these cables. For example, you may encounter things like this in the floor or in the wall, where you have various inputs to plug in. They're usually spaced out, so it's easy to plug into a channel somewhere in the hall. And that's going from the microphone, from a cable. That cable is running to that input somewhere in the hall. Let's pretend it's in the floor. From there, you don't really see what happens. It just kind of disappears and you're like, okay, I hope it works, right? Well, from there, it's running to a preamp, either backstage, sometimes all the way up to the mixer. And then from the preamp, there's a whole bunch of cables that you don't see kind of under the stage, under the seats and everything else, maybe run over the top, back to the mixer. From there, there's a whole bunch of cables again running back to the stage, to the amplifiers. That's where they're usually located, on stage, off stage, in one of the wings. And then there's more cables running to the speakers. So all these cables you don't really see per se. And so you may not perceive, oh, there's the whole signal chain, because you don't see it. The other thing I want to mention is when there are issues, you can kind of tell, okay, where does the issue lie? Either the first part of the chain or the second part of the chain. Kind of in the middle is your mixer. And so on mixers, most modern mixers now will have LED lights on various channels. And if you talk into the microphone and you do not see those LED lights light up, as you might see here in this image, then you kind of know that it is somewhere on the first half. There's a problem with the microphone. There's a problem with the cable from the microphone. There's a problem with the preamp. Maybe it's not turned on. Check that things are turned on. That's number one. Maybe there's a problem with the connection from the preamp to the mixer. And then there could be some internal issues with how you have things plugged in incorrectly with the mixer. So that could be issue number one, if there are no LED lights lighting up when you speak into the microphone. On the second half, if you see lights coming on, as you see here, showing that there is signal coming into the mixer, well, that tells you that everything on the first half is working as it should, right? Because signal is coming into the mixer. The issue now is, well, signal is coming into the mixer, but it's not coming out correctly to the speakers. So you know that's now on the second half from the outputs, or starting first with perhaps something internally with the mixer as far as the settings. It's very complex. To the outputs, the cables, the amplifier, maybe it's not turned on, to the speakers, there could be an issue on the second half. Usually what's on the second half, it's an issue with the mixer, kind of the settings for how it's routed in the mixer if you are seeing a signal chain. But if you don't see, if you're seeing LED lights, but if you're not seeing LED lights, there's a lot of issues on the first half that it could be, and that's very common to happen, where you have to go fix something, a cable goes bad and it's not working anymore. So again, an overview of that signal chain once more. The sound source, then you have the microphone, it's run by a cable, XLR cable usually, to a preamp, preamp to the mixer, mixer to the outputs into the amplifier, amplifier to the speaker, speaker to your ears. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I hope you continue to inspire the future leaders of our world through this wonderful gift we call music. Thanks.